Have you ever made a brother wait 7 weeks to get up on that thing?
She ain't never made a man wait 30 minutes.
Do I smell a whore?
No.
I remember seeing this movie in theaters with my aunt. We 90s kids were not shielded from adult content at all, but I had a time watching this then and now for this recap. Booty Call is such a fun movie to watch. So much going on and so many funny scenes. It was so hard to choose which scenes to add in the review. Sometimes it really be your friends. Buns was such a bad influence on Rashawn, and Nikki really set her girl up for failure. But before I say too much, while watching this movie, I noticed some things, and I have my thoughts. But before we get to that, it's time to recap. So let's get into it. The movie starts with us meeting 2 out of our 4 main characters, Buns and Rashawn. They were preparing for their date night with Rashawn's boo and our friend who Rashawn hoped to set Buns up with. And as they walk, they come across this couple having quite the disagreement.
You think you can't win? You think you can't win, motherfucker?
Jump back, baby, jump back!
Oh, goddamn it, when I need Holocaust sale, I will call Holocaust sale.
Buns uses this to justify why he only participates in booty calls and doesn't want a relationship. They eventually make their way to Chinatown, where they were going to meet Rashawn's boo, Nikki, and her friend, Listerine. And yes, her name was Listerine. Meanwhile, we go to Nikki and Listerine, who are getting ready for this date. Listerine is hesitant about this blind date, but Nikki hypes her up by telling her about Buns, setting this poor girl up for failure.
But he does have class, though, right? Trust me, he is in a class all by himself.
With me!
Technically, she was right, but it wasn't what Listerine thought she meant. See what I'm saying? You're setting her up for failure, and that's supposed to be your homegirl. We learned that Rashawn and Nikki have been seeing each other for about 7 weeks and still hadn't had sex, mainly due to Nikki wanting to be sure he was the right one. But Nikki was getting weak, so she begged Listerine not to leave her alone with Rashawn to keep her 7-week streak going. We'll see if that happens or not. Meanwhile, Rashawn and Buns arrive at the restaurant where they plan to meet the girls. Buns was on Rashawn's case about not sleeping with Nikki. He joked how Rashawn was slipping and didn't have any player left in him, and even pushed him to take a bet that he'd sleep with Nikki that night. As we all know, anytime there is a bet in a movie, things always go left. And let's just say, things get really interesting. As they take a seat at their table, they are greeted by their hostess with the mostest. And he had a thing for Buns, honey, but Buns let it be known that he wasn't his flavor.
Well, I got 3 things for you. Back up Yoko Ono.
Oh, nigga, please.
Listerine and Nikki arrive at the restaurant, and child, Listerine was not impressed.
Did you see that tarantula hair fool? Motherfucker look like Predator.
Buns instantly became insecure. All that mess he was talking went straight out the window. Listerine agrees to see this day through for Nikki. She would owe me big. They sit down and order their meals. Buns and Rashawn both order light, while Listerine and Nikki order pricey menu options. Buns confronts Listerine about her order of lobster and moe and tells her what he expects from her if he pays for her meal.
And hey, if I get you some lobster and some moet, you know what's happening after that.
No, what does happen?
I'm going deep sea diving.
And this starts a tit-for-tat game between the two. Listerine pulls out her platinum credit card and makes it crystal clear that before she pays him back in sexual favors, she'll pay for her own damn meal. And to one-up her, in his mind, I guess, he pulls out a platinum gas card, which makes no sense because he doesn't even have a car. As their meals arrived, Buns was not happy with the lack of shrimp in his shrimp fried rice, and Nikki complained about someone smoking in the restaurant. Buns does everyone a solid by asking this guy to put out his cigarette, which impresses Listerine.
Oh, okay.
Turns out, Buns learned Chinese from watching Bruce Lee flicks with his dad. Listerine spoke Chinese as well and continued to bust his balls in that language. Listerine was not letting up. for now. They find common ground when they are confronted by the hostess and they ever so disrespectfully cuss him out in Chinese.
Cost you extra to fight in restaurant. My mother! Horse mouth bitch motherfucker!
And get kicked out the restaurant. They go to a club and continue hanging out. Buns and Listerine continue their tit for tat by playing a game of pool. Listerine wins this as well. Buns couldn't manage to mind his business. While he and Rashawn were dancing with Nikki and Listerine, Buns was all in Rashawn's business, trying to criticize how he was dancing with Nikki, when he should have been worried about his own disaster of a date. They eventually end up in Nikki's place, and before Buns and Rashawn got any ideas, Nikki told them that they will play a couple of games of spades and go home. That's it. That's all. As they play cards, Rashawn puts out a hint to Nikki that he wants to do a little something, but Nikki shuts that down super quick. And this sparks a conversation about Nikki making Rashawn wait for sex. While Rashawn thinks it's a simple thing for him and Nikki to have sex, Listerine and Nikki let him know that it's not.
Maybe the girl wants a deeper commitment. Maybe the girl wants a soulmate.
Maybe the girl got a brother uptown with 9 inches of ding-dong knocking the bottom out your ass.
Rashawn tries to push for Buns and Listerine to leave so that he can have some alone time with Nikki, but Nikki doesn't want that because she knows she will fold. Instead, she insists that they keep playing cards. Rashawn asks Listerine if she ever made a man wait 7 weeks for sex, and Nikki gave a shady answer.
Have you ever made a brother wait 7 weeks to get up on that thing?
She ain't never made a man wait 30 minutes.
Do I smell a whore?
This sparks a tit for tat between Nikki and Listerine, and Buns, Rashawn, and Listerine eventually grow tired of playing cards. They were all being held hostage by Nikki at this point, but things take a spicy turn when Buns makes a flirty comment which Listerine rejects per usual. But when she asks if he ever stops, he tells her that he never does, and Listerine wants to see if he could back up his big talk. So they start playing footsie underneath the table, and I'm surprised Buns didn't send her to the emergency room with these feet. Child. Eventually, Nikki and Rashawn start playing footsie under the table as well before Nikki snapped everyone out of it. But then the dog got involved, and it got a little weird there. Eventually, Listerine and Buns were ready to get things started, so Listerine made up an excuse to leave with Buns, leaving Nikki along with Rashawn. Buns and Listerine didn't even get into her house good before things got started. She was into some freaky stuff. She had Buns imitating Jesse Jackson.
We can both join together and say, I am somebody.
Say it loud, I am somebody.
And Mike Tyson.
Boxing champion of the world. Ask me what people say.
Meanwhile, Nikki confronted Rashawn about him switching up when he's around Buns and how Buns was a bad influence. Things eventually heat up between the two. Nikki wasn't able to keep her 7-week streak going, but before things went too far, she requested Rashawn use a condom. And luckily, he had one, but the dog got to it before he could use it. Meanwhile, Buns pulled out his inner Bill Cosby.
Like to take my time while I'm knocking the boots.
Nikki insisted that Rashawn get another condom and even called Listerine to make sure she was being safe as well. And thank goodness, because Listerine was about to risk it all, child.
You take a hard look at Buns and tell me that you don't need a condom.
The problem is, we gonna do this or what?
She sent him out swiftly. So Buns and Rashawn set out to get some condoms while Listerine teases Nikki about her and Rashawn getting dangerously close to having sex. Buns and Rashawn hit up a corner store and got lambskin condoms for $38.
$40.
But lambskin wasn't going to work for Nikki.
Don't you listen to the Surgeon General? Lambskin condoms don't protect you against the transmission of the HIV virus.
Nikki sends him out again to get latex condoms and blocks Listerine from risking it all yet again. Nikki stayed saving this girl from her risky decisions. Oh, and Rashawn volunteered to take Killa, Nikki's dog, out for a walk while they search for condoms. Rashawn and Buns hit up another store and they leave Killa outside, which turns out to be a very bad decision. Somehow, Killer gets loose and gives them pure hell as they chase him around the city. Killer meets them at the door, saving them from having to make up a lie about where he is. Things progress with Nikki and Rashawn, but again, right before they went all the way and Rashawn went down south, Nikki wanted him to use a dental dam, which, surprise, surprise, she didn't have. And yes, they had to go right back to the store. And now Buns was pissed because he didn't even plan to do all that with Listerine. Now, these store clerks were already suspicious about Buns and Rashawn getting condoms late at night, but with them coming back to get plastic wrap, things were solidified for them. Rashawn and Buns were an item in their eyes.
You got to lick it before you kick it. You got to make it soft and wet before you stick it.
The guys run into this holy roller from Rashawn's mom's church who tries to shame them for being out late and buying condoms and plastic wrap. But child, he couldn't judge anybody.
Listen, I know how you all feel when that furry temptress seemed like she's calling your name. She said, "Come on, Rashawn."
Man, got my nipples hard.
Watch how you talk to me.
Things continue to go downhill when the store they're in gets robbed. When they try to help, they get spotted, but this works in their favor because the store clerks handle the problem and destroy their own store at the same damn time. The guys finally get back to Listerine and Nikki's place, and child, Rashawn was a little too excited and eager. He damn near killed himself trying to prepare for deep sea diving. And if you thought that no one else could possibly be this reckless and stupid, you would be wrong. It can't be this complicated. And it was at this point where Rashawn and Buns reached their limit and were officially done. As they leave out, they tell the girls how they almost got shot earlier that night. Now Listerine and Nikki felt bad. Well, mainly Nikki. Nikki apologizes to Rashawn, and while she does that, Buns lets it slip that Rashawn won the bet, and Nikki was pissed. While Rashawn tries to beg for Nikki's forgiveness, Buns flags down a cab, and this cab driver was so afraid that he was getting robbed that he runs, drops the gun, which misfires, and grazes Rashawn in the leg. Listerine and Nikki ride with the guys to take Rashawn to the hospital and get him stitched up. When they arrive at the emergency room, they have trouble getting Rashawn seen due to him not having any proof of insurance. They try to reason with this lady, but it just wasn't working, so Buns took matters into his own hands by posing as a doctor.
Eyes, those cheekbones, that smile, and I love the little mustache. It's working. But do something with the chia pet.
Buns gets him set up with the nurse who gets him prepped to treat his wound. And as he leaves the room, Buns gets pulled into a labor and delivery. Child, he was too busy trying to mac instead of doing his fake job.
You ever go to Nails on Ladies Night? You know, because it's like free before 10 and everything like that. Got a brand new DJ there, DJ Knockers.
Meanwhile, Listerine and Nikki were in the waiting room waiting on the guys. Listerine put Nikki on game about men.
They're only good for one thing, and most of the time they don't even know how to do that right. But look at a brother like Buns. Does he act human?
But you just slept with Buns.
Like I said, they're only good for one thing.
While Rashawn was waiting to be seen, he's placed in a room where a number of men were waiting for their procedures. One of these men was scheduled for testicular removal, which was news to him, and he didn't want that. So he switched his chart with Rashawn. Listen, this has to be the worst hospital ever. Just as this happens, the real doctor stood up, and now hospital security was looking for Buns. Poor Rashawn was out of it, but not quite out of it enough to know he was being pulled into the wrong procedure. Meanwhile, the girls find Buns and let him know that they need to find Rashawn and get out of there before they are caught. Nikki sets off by herself while Buns and Listerine continue to look for Rashawn. As they avoid being caught by this lady, they duck off into this room where things get started up once again, and they, well...
Yeah.
And it was a major letdown.
No, you didn't.
Damn.
My crippled ass could have rolled around in her coochie longer than that.
And they eventually get back to searching for Rashawn. Nikki eventually finds him and saves him from being castrated by doing the unthinkable, telling the surgeon mid-operation that he didn't have insurance. Rashawn comes to and is relieved to find his junk in one piece, though he was hairless down there. Rashawn begs Nikki to not tell Buns, and Nikki gets on him once again for caring more about Buns' opinion than her feelings. Listerine and Buns catch up with them, and since Rashawn was safe, treated, and okay, Nikki was ready to leave. But Rashawn throws Care to the wind and proves his love for her by flashing Buns, allowing him to junk on his freshly shaved coconuts. Nikki and Rashawn eventually make up, while Listerine and Buns did not. And Nikki and Rashawn finally, well,
Yeah.
and Listerine and Buns went for round 2. And hopefully it was longer than 3 seconds that time. And that's the end of the movie. And here are my final thoughts. There is one thing that we must give Nikki credit for. She wasn't going to let anybody put her body at risk. There's actually 2 things. She wasn't going to let any man put her friend's body at risk either. Homegirl was all about safe sex and knew how to protect her body. And even though I was too young to be watching this movie when it came out, that lambskin condom tip stayed with me until I was ready. So I guess this movie served a purpose. But Nikki did set Listerine up for the okie doke though. Had her thinking Buns was a catch when homeboy was a straight up throwaway. I wouldn't let her set me up with anyone else. Nikki was intentional when it came to sex, and to a certain extent, I feel Rashawn was too, despite letting Buns influence him to take a bet. Actually, he was patient enough to wait for Nikki and wasn't pressuring her until the bet happened. And I'm not sure why he valued Buns' opinion anyway, when dude had his own issues. I never noticed how insecure Buns became when he first saw Listerine. He talked so much mess, but when he saw her, he was instantly nervous, unsure of himself, checking his breath. He turned into the exact opposite of what he portrayed himself to be. He talked a lot of mess that he couldn't back up, especially when it came to the bedroom. Dude literally lasted 5 seconds. 5. And he was so careless when it came to sex. Reusing condoms or not using them at all, sleeping with people he barely knew. Listerine was careless too. And maybe they were made for each other in the end. Who knows? I'm glad Rashawn stopped caring about what Buns thought and gave in to how he felt about Nikki. If they were going to be together, their relationship should only concern them and how they feel about each other. But all in all, I enjoyed watching this movie again, and I can't believe my 10-year-old self was allowed to see this movie. This was way too grown for me at that age. But I have a feeling I wasn't alone. Anyway, that's it for this recap. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. If there's a recap you'd like to see, please click the link in the description box below to submit your request. As for the next review, all I'm going to say is 2001. This movie stars an undercover brother who never really gets his flowers, and another guy who did a phenomenal job playing an American god. This movie proves that you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, sometimes. You'll see what I mean next week. Bye!